Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the break for the second part of our session today. Our discussion topic is going to be partnership across the supply chain with a focus on authenticity and traceability. We have a fantastic group assembled with us for this discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. First, we have Daniele Arioldi of Albini. Great to have you here, Daniele. Next, we have Ben Tomkins of Oritain. Good to see you, Ben. And then Marc Lewkowitz of Supima. Always good to see you, Marc. So during the panel, please submit any questions you have over chat. We'll do our best to reply to them directly or address them later to the panel during the Q&A session. I'm going to leave the panel now for their discussion and return for the Q&A. Have a great discussion, gentlemen.
Thanks, Buxton.
Thanks, Buxton. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and we are excited that you can all join us in this event over these couple of days. And it's an opportunity for us to really be able to talk to you directly. You know, we have two great panelists with us today with Daniele and Ben in terms of talking about authenticity and why it's such an important and critical factor for Supima. So to begin with, I'd like to just kind of pass it over to Ben so he can kind of update what Oritain is, how it is a CSI of cotton, and how the forensic science works to help authenticate Supima cotton back to its origin.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Marc. And firstly, just thank you so much for having us today as well. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you all and be joined on the panel. Real unfortunate this couldn't actually be in California, but it's a great setup, so thank you. So just to provide a bit of background to Oritain. So we were founded out of New Zealand in the University of Otago back in 2008. And we were founded by a gentleman called Professor Russell Frew, who's one of the leading experts in using forensic science to prove the origin of products. And we initially started within the food industry. We then transitioned to working also within pharmaceuticals. But most recently, and over the past 6 years, a big part of our business has been within the fashion and textiles industry. So as Marc mentioned, we sometimes get compared to the CSI of cotton. So what we do is we combine forensic science with statistical analysis to prove the origin of the fiber itself. And so if we take cotton as an example, it's a product of its environment, and everything that is grown, reared, or made absorbs elements from its local environment. So cotton as a plant is absorbing elements from the soil. It's being impacted by climatic and other atmospheric conditions. And so what we're testing for is trace elements and isotopes, and these are unique to the production location in which that cotton is grown. So cotton from the US looks very different to that of cotton from the likes of Brazil and India and Pakistan and so on. But because we're measuring for these elements in parts per million and parts per billion, we're even able to identify differences at a regional level and even down to a farm of origin level where required. And so once we've established this database, which we have done with Supima, it can't be tampered with, it can't be replicated, and it can't be destroyed. And at any point in the supply chain, we're then able to test against that to prove origin-based claims.
I think that's a great point, Ben, with regards to talking about the ability to test at any point in the supply chain. You know, it's transparent all the way through the supply chain, all the way from the origin point in the fiber of the field, through to the yarn, to the fabric, to the finished garment, and the finished garment on the shelf at the retail store. So there is no additional additive or marker technology required other than using the fiber and Mother Nature's good graces in implementing the trace elements and the isotopes into the fiber such that we can see that and then trace it back all the way through the supply chain. And now we also have the ability to bring Daniele on board because he has the ability to say how it impacts his business and what it means for them as an organization to have authenticity in the supply chain, why that gives them comfort, why that gives them clarity in terms of being able to tell a message directly to their customers and saying this is verifiable, provable, and what we deliver, we can stand behind 100%.
Thank you, Marc, for the invitation. It's a pleasure for us because we are on the end of the production of the pipeline. And to be here to discuss in front of the growers is something very important for us. Traceability, authenticity is a lot of word around this word, but it's really something that our company, that is a very old company for textile, we are more than 140 years old. And it's very important to prove to our customer that what we produce is what really is inside the fabric. That is a long idea that we have from the last 10 years, but we never found a good solution to prove scientifically this very important point. We know exactly from 10 years one fabric which cotton is inside, but it's not enough our heritage, our story to prove to the customer. The customer needs to have somebody else can prove scientifically this point. I remember your call many years ago, 5 more or less now, to introduce this project with Oritain. And now we are really in a very good position on the market because we can really prove to the customer, to the final product, that one garment, in particular for us is the shirting, because we are a producer of shirting fabric, that this garment is made by a specific cotton coming from the specific area. And this is really an upgrade on the authenticity of the product around the world. And with Supima, we really grow this project together, and it's really a stone of the cotton industry from my point of view.
That's awesome, Daniele. Thank you for that insight and perspective from your position on the manufacturing side of the supply chain. You know, we look back at the history of the textile industry and the longevity of it, and there has always been a distinct level of opacity with the supply chain. And that opacity has always benefited the brands and retailers in terms of flexibility, getting products to the store shelves, and giving the suppliers the flexibility to pull products into their supply chain such that they can deliver on schedule and on time. One of the challenges with that is if something breaks within the supply chain, it's not always necessarily to substitute with something that you are expecting or something that is planned. So that is where some of the issues have popped up in recent years. We've seen issues with regards to other labeled cottons in the marketplace being identified at retail, and then it turns out that those products weren't. We have instances where we've seen challenges with organic cotton being labeled as organic and it turning out that that cotton wasn't actually organic. So for us as an organization, because we're so intrinsically tied back to the grower, to the quality of the origin of the fiber that was developed in 1900 here in Arizona, just southeast of Phoenix, we want to be able to provide the tool set that enables our brands and partners to really and succinctly be able to say, this is Supima, we stand behind it, we trust in it, and we believe in all the benefits that come along with it. By being able to authenticate the cotton, we can talk about sustainability aspects, we can talk about the growing aspects. It associates with the Better Cotton Initiative and the Cotton Trust Protocol, which are all better growing farming practice systems that enable a better message to be associated with that cotton. And through authenticity, we can actually demonstrate and prove it. So Daniele, I'll ask you, maybe there's a way you can share a perspective from your customers that are using your cotton and why they come to you specifically to buy the Supima with the traceability, authenticity built in through Oritain.
Yes, the reason is basic first of the quality of the raw material. You know better than me that Supima is one of the best, probably the best cotton today in the world in terms of length, strength, and feel on the fabric. And also another important point, as you know, is the contamination, because you can get a perfect white shirting, like white shirt, for many reasons. And the traceability is something that we have to have on our products. And today, when you buy from us, you buy real fabric made by this cotton. And this is really one of the key points today to approach the market. And it was what was very strange, that the first was the luxury brand, the most luxury brand, that normally they already have by themselves the heritage to sell the fabric. And for us, you remember when we started this project with the first pilot, the final customer is one of the best luxury brand. That means it's not enough only the name of the company, but also what is behind the product. And with our supply chain, starting from the growers to the garment, we can give to them something that is unique. And probably from my point of view is the only reason to be in the future on the market with a very good product on the higher level of the product. That is, I think, is a key point for the luxury brand in particular.
That's awesome, Daniele. Thank you. And Ben, I'll ask you now. I think, it's interesting to get perspective from you, because you're working directly with our partners and the brands that have come to you specifically of saying, look, we want to work and be able to have a message of being sure about the product that we're using. And when you talk with them, what is that conversation like? How does that begin, and where do they end up? How do they view their supply chain after they start this initiative?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think just to give it some context, and this is probably specific for all brands, but unfortunately, one of the reasons that we exist is because historic traceability, whether that be paper documentation, barcodes, labels, they are susceptible to adulteration, to counterfeit, to mislabeling, which we've seen in the marketplace recently. And our sort of saying is that if you can't prove the origin of the fiber, it's very difficult to stand behind any claims that are associated with that particular fabric or with that particular product. And traceability is really a prerequisite for understanding the environmental, social, and ethical impact that you also have as a company. And I think it was Kering that identified through their EP&L that 70% of their impact as a company came from the raw material part of their supply chain. So having certainty around that data, scientific verification, and trust in what you've been provided through vendor documentation is really, really important. And so we're having a lot of amazing discussions at this point in time with a lot of brands who recognize that given the complexity of supply chains, given how vast they are, that they need to implement some level of traceability so that they can not only underpin their sustainability claims, whether it's 2025 or 2030 goals, but to also underpin their sourcing policies, which at this point in time is a very important piece of that as well. And when we're having discussions with brands and retailers, it's really interesting because a lot of the initial discussions came from a sustainability perspective. But as we're having more and more conversations, we're also speaking to legal teams, so legal counsel, because traceability can have an impact on the risk register because it can provide a risk mitigant. We're having discussions with procurement, we're having discussions with marketing because it enables them to communicate to their consumers in an authentic manner that's being verified by a third party. So the conversations are really cross-department, and we're really seeing this as a multi-enterprise solution.
That's awesome, Ben. Really good insight relative to that. And I think, when we look at the broader supply chain, the message of the challenge brands have in terms of knowing their supply chain, knowing all the participants and everybody that's engaged in it, is key and critical. what we found in many instances is there's a lot of uncertainty and lack of clarity of what that supply chain looks like, or there's a lot of outsourcing that happens, and there's a lot of players that get looped into the supply chain that aren't necessarily transparent to their partners. So those are key critical things. You look at blockchain, for example, it can generate a lot of data, and it is being used in terms of trying to talk about transparency and traceability, but ultimately blockchain in itself still needs to have validation of the underlying physical. If you don't have that physical underlying verification, you can't actually prove that the blockchain is authentic relative to the product that it's referencing. So that is one thing that is really beneficial relative to your platform and the forensic science used to authenticate Supima back to the origin. We want to be able to be in a position that we have this awesome toolkit, this facility that enables our partners to utilize something that we've created in conjunction with you and the rest of the partners that are using Oritain now, such that they don't have to create something on their own, that they don't have to develop something. This is something that's already existing, and Supima has already invested the money over the last 3 years to create the platform, to test samples of all the Supima from all the different growing regions in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And with that succinct data set now, we have the ability to provide this as a toolkit that the brands can easily implement through Oritain, through its statistical testing analysis program, such that you have the ability to authenticate the products in your supply chain. So those are, one of the benefits of this whole effort is such that it doesn't have to be unitarily approached by everybody on their own. We already have the platform and the foundation set, and that makes it readily available. And the beauty is it's ubiquitous. It applies to all Supima cotton, not just a subset of Supima cotton or only Supima cotton from one region, but it's all Supima cotton falls under this. And I will also add, for our US cotton counterparts, that Oritain has also put this platform in place for all US cotton. So the US is the first country that has a cotton production that can be authenticated back to origin. So for all our brand partners out there, whether you're using Supima or US cotton, these are assets that you can tap into and take advantage of now relative to your businesses. So Daniele, let's switch back to you now. How do you see brands coming to you and the outlook for the future in terms of trying to be authentic, and incorporating, utilizing Oritain and Supima cotton? How does that valuation proposition benefit them in terms of getting that message out to their customers?
Thank you for the question. The customer come to us to ask, what do you have as a traceability? I'm sure for that the future is only have to go this way. And we are in pole position on this because we start from the beginning. And also just to say some word around, just to connect with your word before. For example, if we go to the GOTS is like the blockchain. You can, paper by paper, you can arrive to the hand and declare that this fabric is made by organic cotton. But essentially, without the traceability with Oritain, it's impossible to be sure about this. This is the reason why there is a lot of problem today from other countries, it's not US, where there are some fake organic cotton on the market. For me, for our company, work on the traceability from the normal Supima, and now in the last 2 years with you, also with the US cotton that you tell before some word, and Oritain, we also pass the step to the organic cotton, because organic cotton is important for the future, but must be traced on the real trace, not just with the paperwork. That is the first example, from my point of view, that the traceability is really key for everybody, not only for the luxury of some niche market, but for everybody in the world, for all the level of product. That is my opinion. But it's daily work, because we have a daily conversation with customer, with brand, with other people about this, and we have a daily conversation with Ben to discuss you spoke with the customer, you spoke with with this brand, what's up in the night with you, Marc, because there's questions coming from everywhere, and you really made with Oritain a very good, important step to be the first in the market with this important point.
Well, thank you, Daniele. I think it's a great point. And relative to the organic, for those of you that may not be familiar, Albini is likely the largest single consumer and producer of organic Supima cotton yarns in the world today. They've stepped up and have been really honorable in terms of making sure that there's a fair price paid to the grower, such that it's a viable solution to use 100% organic farming practices, that there's a price available to the grower that is justifiable for them to go through the efforts of growing organic cotton. It's not an easy solution, and it's complicated. No. And Daniele and the Albini group have done a sensational job of being stewards relative to that, and making those efforts with Oritain to get down to the nuanced levels where they can actually authenticate their cotton back to the individual farm that the organic Supima is grown on. And it's not just only a Supima authentication, but in an instance like you're talking about singular origin, ability to have that finite detail such that you can talk about the cotton coming from one farm, and that's an organic cotton farm. You can prove that. That is a milestone, and something we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago in the cotton industry. And that is going to become more of the future in terms of the authenticity and traceability within the supply chain. So, Ben, I know this has been an adventure for you and Oritain, and for us, Albini as well as all the other partners that are engaging with this traceability authenticity initiative. It's certainly been an uphill battle, and you may want to kind of reflect a little bit on what that journey has been like.
In terms of our journey, it's definitely been, for me, it's been absolutely fascinating and just a pleasure to be a part of. But the science that we use, so as I mentioned, we were founded out of the University of Otago by Professor Russell Frew. And in 2008, he realized that there was a commercial application for the science that we use. So the science actually originated from the criminal forensic field. Because it's a forensic science, it meets something called the Daubert standard. And that means that it can actually be used as admissible evidence in a court of law if it's required. So again, we're really trying to empower brands who have operated in opaque supply chains. And as a brand, as a retailer, or even as a manufacturer, if you have the ability to communicate to your supply chain that with the best interests of a customer and the best interests of the product, we want to provide the highest level of integrity. So we've introduced Oritain as part of our verification. Not only does that help detect when there might be non-compliant behavior or possible adulteration or blending, but as a brand and retailer, having the ability to communicate that is a huge deterrent. But part of it is really educating the supply chain for, look, this is why traceability is important. This is why we're implementing Oritain, amongst other different tactics to ensure that we have the highest level of integrity.
Super, Ben. And that's a really good point with regards to cotton. 80% of the world's natural fibers are cotton. It's a massive crop. It has huge agronomic impact around the globe. It employs a lot of rural communities, providing jobs to underserved communities and developing nations. Cotton is a massive crop, and because of its size and because of this textile size, or textile industry size, we need to try and provide the toolkits that help to improve the growers' lives, improve the industry, and provide that authenticity that helps develop those systems that stand behind and support the systems that are actually out there trying to do the right thing. And Ben and Daniele, you've both been to the cotton fields. Daniele, I might ask you, what was your perspective, coming out to see some of the cotton growers and their feedback in terms of their thoughts relative to growing the cotton. How did they feel about that?
I remember when we arrived in El Paso together with the car in the early morning to the growers, and for me it was the first time to the small growers in US, and really it's something that you can remember forever, because you see in front of the growers that for many years every day work to grow better cotton, to have in front who's the final user of the cotton. And this is important to create a support coming from us back to the growers. That is a really important step on the future. It's important to be more and more connected together, and was not easy in the beginning, because generally the weavers like us buy yarn, and back to the cotton is really a very interesting step, but it's the only way to keep all the supply chain in a good situation, a good mood. And the support, one time we have to support the growers, like, for example, the actual situation of the prices that is really too low for the product that Supima grow. Two, in some other moment when the situation is completely different, where we need the support. But essentially, we have to be together to grow in a better way, not only for sustainability, for environment, but also to study new seed, study new qualities, and it's really important. And with this project of the traceability, it's much easier, for my opinion, to be together and to have our feedback in very short time is going to the growers. In the past, that was not easy to do, because there is many steps on the supply chain that cannot connected very well. It's important. Is a future is there. There's no other chance for product like the cotton, in particular the external staple cotton.
So it's really fascinating. You're testing how many different elements are you looking at right now?
It's around 42 different trace elements and up to 6 or 7 different isotopes. And again, in parts per million and parts per billion. So just an incredible amount of data that we get back, which the scientists and statisticians definitely do not let me look at whatsoever. I just talk about the commercial aspect, but yeah, some just incredible level of detail on the IP in which we've created to be able to analyze these data points and to be able to interpret them from a statistical analysis perspective. And the models that we've created is pretty mind-blowing in some instances.
So it's a real robust science that really helps provide something on the surface that seems pretty simple. Authenticity, something that you can trust and you can stand behind. But it's a really complex effort. It's taken a lot of investment and time and energy, a lot of research and understanding from Dr. Frew and his scientific team to be able to create this information such that we can utilize it today, from a simple standpoint and saying, hey, we have the ability to be authentic about what we do. So that's an amazing milestone for us. For Daniele, for Ben, for all our partners, it provides an avenue of being able to message something with comfort and knowledge, and to be able to connect with that customer, which Supima can help you work with in terms of telling that story, how to get that message out relative to being able to say, look, you can trust in this. Here's the science. Here's the benefits of Mother Nature. These are the things that all work collectively together to deliver to you the best possible product. I've tried to give you a bit of a round look at the story about authenticity. And, Ben and Daniele have lived through this long process of experience over the last 3 years as we've built this out together. and they have a lot of insight into the textile industry, how the programs work, what it takes to be authentic. And maybe I'll start with you, Daniele. Maybe you can give us some additional thoughts of any points that you think might be relevant for our audience today.
It's one important point is to build the traceability. It's important also to choose the good partner on all the steps of the supply chain. Of course, quite easy, I think very easy to find good growers with your support in US. But after you have to, in our case, the spinning production, weaving production, and also the garment production must be with you. You cannot work with everybody. And my suggestion for other competitor of us, in case, or similar on the position of the supply chain, like weavers or knitters, the important is to follow all the supply chain, not just start only from the cotton, but have a good choice of the step of the production, because it's the only way to be safe on all the supply chain. With Ben, we have a very hard work with our very complicated supply chain, because the cotton from US is going to span in Italy, in our small spinning mill in Turkey, in our plant in Egypt, and also in China. But we need to control every steps in a very well controlled, and Oritain support us a lot on this external control, because must be done from somebody out of ourselves. It's complicated, not easy, costly, but the final result it's you tell before, the milestone of the cotton industry. I think it's very important to go there, everybody, in order to be with good cotton in production, to be sustainable, to be traced. It's really not easy, but hard work, but with very good result.
I think that's two great points, Daniele. Well, several great points, but I think there's two that I'd like to just highlight quickly. It's hard work, number one, and there's a cost. None of this is free. It takes time, energy. There is a bit of a cost in terms of testing, in terms of putting the supply chain together, finding the partner that is going to participate and commit to doing the right thing. These things just don't happen out of the blue. It takes time and energy. It takes collaboration, and these developing of long-term partnerships that you can count on, for support, and support both ways, up and down the supply chain. Ben, I'll pass it over to you now. Maybe you just want to throw in a couple points that from your perspective, from the science side, from the challenges you may have seen, with the complexity of the supply chain, and where those opportunities are, where those paths may be of least resistance, or where those bigger challenges may lie.
So, and just to pick up on both your points, just in the fact that it does take time, both Daniele from an Albini perspective, but also yourself, Marc, this isn't something that just happens overnight. I understand from Supima, it's been a journey. It's been a over 10-year journey to get to this position. And also for Albini, this has been part of their DNA in terms of traceability, having a very special situation where they have such direct contact with the farmers and two-way feedback. And having that level of paper documentation and processes in place. We see ourselves as not a silver bullet solution. We work in conjunction to support existing paper traceability, and these things do take time, but we're in a fantastic position where we can implement these programs with pretty much immediate effect. And because we're a product test, and because we're not having to add anything to the fiber itself, that means that we're manufacturing friendly. And I think Daniele can attest to that, that we're not having to integrate machinery into the manufacturing process, which requires mass adoption from all supply chain partners. We're simply able to take product at any point in the supply chain and test to it. So yes, it is difficult in terms of looking at the scale of the solution or the magnitude of the problem, especially when you're looking at complex supply chains. But the solution is easily implementable as well. And also, just the last point, I think a lot of the discussion has been around the brand and retailers, but this is really consumer driven. And I think just at this point in time, and even going through a current pandemic, it's been great to see that the consumer sentiment for sustainability and for traceability has still been extremely high. There's been some joint publications out from the likes of McKinsey and Company and the Business of Fashion that really identified that sustainability is a mega trend, and it's only something that's going to accelerate. And it's really something in which brands and retailers can communicate to their consumers in an authentic manner, to be able to communicate the good things that they're doing in the supply chain as well. And I think that pull through from the consumers and the fact that they have so much information and so much access to information, and now they're really looking at brands to act responsibly, but also to prove how they're doing that and prove how they're underpinning it. So I think as a trend, it's only set to accelerate and get even more important as we go forward.
That's great, Ben. Thank you very much. And I think one thing we haven't touched on as of yet is the sampling process. And Ben, you can probably reiterate on this a little bit better than I can, but it's not seen as an additive process because whether you're working with BV or you're working with SGS or whoever you are already in your testing program with regards to your other requirements for your brand sourcing initiatives, the testing for Oritain can be done in conjunction with samples that you're already collecting through the supply chain. It could just be a test conducted on that sample without having to go out and specifically pay for an additional factory visit, without having to pay for another sampling of a test. So there's efficiencies that can be derived out of this without having to create something additive or new. So I think that was something that we've always received a lot of questions from, is how is it handled and how is it managed? And Ben, maybe you just have a couple points there just to add on to that in terms of what you've done and how you've worked in terms of that process.
Exactly. So when we're also having a discussion around auditing, initially people think, okay, well, I have to shut down the entire production facility and a load of people have to go and inspect, but that's really not the case. Simply, we're able to take a swatch of fabric or a yarn cone or testing raw cotton lint directly from the bale. So it's a really simple process. We can provide the support and the infrastructure to be able to implement that. We're working with a number of the world's largest brands and retailers to implement verification programs on a global basis across a number of different vendors in a number of different locations. And that can be supported by us and by our third parties. So the strategic partnerships we have in place, or whether it's working with the brand's third-party auditor as well, to exactly that. If they're conducting quality tests or if they're visiting a facility from a social auditing perspective, they can also collect samples. And it's simply taking a sample, placing it into an Oritain tamper-proof bag. We have standard operating procedures in regards to sample collection and ensuring the integrity of that sample. But then it's simply sent to us for analysis with results provided. So it is an easy process to implement.
That's super. Again, it's not an easy process, and we're here to support all of our brand partners. The whole reason we created this initiative was try to be a partner, somebody that you can count on and depend on, on multiple different aspects, from all the different touch points that we have with regards to your organizations. We are simply here as a tool to be supportive in the promotion of Supima, in terms of the awareness, the education processes of Supima, and then now today, the authenticity and traceability. And with regards to using Oritain, one of the beautiful points is that it's not only forward-looking. we don't have to wait until something is done specifically to a cotton to test. We can look at cotton, and even cotton from a couple years ago, to look back and authenticate it as Supima. So it is, really transparent, to use that term, in the field of Supima cotton. We can look at current crop, last year's crop, couple years of crop, the future crop. All of that cotton will fit within that wheelhouse under that Oritain authenticity framework. So, it's an effort we've put in a lot of time. We're always here to work with you and support your organizations. I know Ben and Daniele would be happy to engage in any conversations that you may have or you might like to take forward with them. They have tremendous knowledge and experience already working with those platforms. And, we have a real diversity. And the beauty is it can go into any product. So it's not exclusive of any particular yarn count or fabric. Whatever the Supima cotton can go into, whether it's socks or jeans or jackets or Ventile fabrics or knits, sweaters, bed linens, etc. We have a flexibility to use the cotton in any product. So we have a really robust platform, and we look forward to working with all of you on this authenticity initiative. And I want to be clear, there's a lot of conversation in the marketplace relative to different terminology in the marketplace, whether it's transparency, traceability, authenticity, sustainability. They all uniquely have different meanings and points of valuation. Traceability is about ability to track something through the supply chain, generally speaking, where transparency is ability to see into the supply chain. And the sustainability is association with different aspects of that. The one unique one is that authenticity, because that is the underlying and underpinning one of all of them. If you don't have authenticity, you don't know, and you can't speak to knowledgeably speak about the product that you have in your supply chain. So, with that, I think we probably can have Buxton come back up and look at the opportunity to answer some Q&As that we may have from the audience.
Hey, perfect, Marc. I was just about to walk on, so right on cue. I know you guys could have gone on and on and on, but thank you so much for that great discussion. I've got a couple questions that have come in. I think there was one, let's start with you, Ben. Could you speak about specifically the process to map the Supima growing area to make Supima fully traceable?
Certainly. So, again, mentioned the scientists and statisticians. So they would come up with a sampling program that has been specific for the growing regions of Supima across the 4 states. And then with that, when we first started the partnership, it was to collect the actual physical sample of the fiber. So from the cotton boll or from modules during the harvest season. So it was a collection of those, and then we put them through
so
our
chain of custody. That was across all the different regions, the different states, Texas, New Mexico, yes. Arizona, California.
Precisely. So what we're trying to do is capture the variability of that particular growing region, which is exactly what we have done for Supima, and to then analyze them and then through statistical analysis, create the origin fingerprint and database specific for Supima cotton. And that was an investment made some years ago. And what we have continued to do on each harvest is collect additional samples to, again, ensure that we've captured any changes in regard to temporal changes, climatic changes, although they're minuscule over a year-to-year basis, to, again, refresh the database, and we will continue to do that. But in conjunction with that, we've also invested a significant amount of time, both in resource and people, to create a global cotton database. So it's amazing to understand what Supima looks like, but we also have to understand what Supima doesn't look like. So with that endeavor, we've also continued to grow our global cotton database in conjunction with that as well.
So that's great. So just to make sure I understand it correctly, so for each growing region, you're capturing the levels of these 42 different elements, the different variability across those 42 elements, then to contrast them to other growing areas to show the differences.
Yes, yeah, precisely. By testing just purely the cotton itself, and also in addition, and Marc briefly mentioned, but as part of our partnership to become the official traceability partner of Cotton USA as well, I believe it was September last year, we also conducted a very similar sampling program, which again captured the variability of the entirety of the US cotton production as well, undertaking that similar sampling process.
Great. And just to really make sure I've got this and to make sure our audience kind of fully understands this. So now these levels that are attached to the fiber, take them back to origin. Do those continue throughout the processing, through all the different stages? Can they be impacted by different finishing or performance applications that are made to a product across the supply chain?
Great to get that clarification, and yes. So during the time in which we've been working within the textile industry, that's been significant IP that we've also developed as a company, ensuring that we can test product at different points in the supply chain across a whole different number of manufacturing methods across different products as well. So yes, regardless of the product, we're able to test, and regardless of the processes that's also been through, what we have continued to do is build considerable amount of IP in understanding what some of those differences in terms of production treatments might have on the cotton fiber, to then statistically take that away from the equation, so we can still just test the cotton itself. So
you can test the cotton, you could test the yarn, you could test at the fabric, and then you could test that shirt that is on the shelf in the retail store.
Exactly. So again, sure, Daniele can attest to this, but we're testing at every point in the supply chain for them. So whether that's inbound raw cotton lint, taking samples from the actual cotton bales itself, whether that's testing undyed yarn, dyed yarn, finished fabric across different production processes, all the way through to exactly as you stated, testing the finished product itself off of retail shelf.
If I could shift to, sorry, Ben, go ahead.
No, Daniele, and I said that it was impressive when we make the first test, starting from the raw cotton, roving from the spinning mill, gray yarn, and we have different product on the shirting, yarn dyed, piece dyed, white fabric. And when I share all these samples to Ben, and after a few months, he sent me back the result. It was really impressive because with completely different chemical processing, from the yarn dye to the piece dyed, the elements are the same of the beginning. That was really impressive by myself. And really, we test every change of the processing. Don't keep all these elements in the same stage.
Wow, so you're saying it's consistent no matter what the processing, no matter what the stage is, that you get that consistency, that it traces back to origin, and you've got that identity.
Yes, impressive. When you see the numbers and the data, I was very impressive, because I'm thinking that if you have the same cotton but you bleach one time, in another fabric you just mercerize, another one you make WR or chemicals up to the fabric, and finally the element that you are on the field you see on the final fabric is impressive. It's really. It's something that you can see that are inside the cotton. You cannot take out from doing the processing.
So now, when we talk about testing, how do you decide how much testing is enough to really validate and authenticate your cotton content, and what, across the different stages, how do you make those decisions? Daniele, and just your own product, how often are you testing? At what points do you test to get that authentication?
It was the first pilot with Oritain. We sit each other. We explain very careful our steps on the processing. We decided to go more than what was the minimum because it was the first one, and really pick up the samples from a lot of steps on the production. And now, after 2 years' time of experience, we reduce a little bit the steps. We are concentrated on the main steps that are the yarn, cotton, of course, yarn after dyeing, and 2 steps on the finishing, and go to the final product. And we decide now to probably in the future can be cut some tests, correct, Ben, because we see that the processing don't change nothing. The future could be if we try to make some Supima new fabric with some crazy chemical process, new process. We need to test more careful the steps. But today we are, I think we are by year, if I don't, I'm not sure, tell me, Ben, we are going to reduce a little bit the test during the steps because our experience is very good and it showed these numbers.
Now, how about your customers, Daniele, the brands and retailers you work with? What's been their reaction? What's been their approach?
The approach is, in the beginning was completely two approach. One approach very straight, very confidential, like the project with Caring that also Ben and Marc already spoke before. They was enthusiastic on this, and also the experience was good because they start to understood how much is complicated the supply chain to make one shirt in fabric. Everybody thinking that is quite easy to produce a shirt in fabric. To make good shirt in fabric in a good cost, with a good processing, it's very complicated. I think the feedback is that they don't pay €1 more. Don't mind for this, but they understood how much is complicated our supply chain, and the approach now with them, they start to plan the production in a different way. They understood that if they want to have specific fabric, 100% Supima organic trace, they need to start to discuss with us 1 year before, just to start from the cotton. This is one of the keystone of this project of traceability. We pass more information to our customer, how much is complicated, how much is important to plan in advance, just the strategy and the way together. Now many other customers coming on this point, and the first step is not easy, but I see month by month, correct Ben, every also small customer, they start to look very careful on this, and very interesting to also, if they are very small producer, they want to arrive to have this very, very clear. The traceability and authenticity is important for many new customers. Not easy in the beginning because you have to see it. They cannot buy the fabric ready tomorrow, but they have to plan. But step by step, we are in a good position, in the good view for the future.
Now it sounds like what this is really creating is a new level of partnership across the supply chain, whereas previously you might have had, competition between these different suppliers, between, the cotton and the spinning and the weaving and the manufacturing and the retailer, that now in a way, from what you're telling me, Daniele, there has to be a real openness and sharing that really wasn't there before if you're going to achieve this level of transparency.
Yes, is completely different approach of the customer. There is still a lot of confusion because you receive sometimes some crazy requests like, can you declare that this fabric is not with Chinese cotton? I said, it's 100% Supima, trace, or can be the Chinese cotton. There is still some confusion for some customer, but we are teaching each one with the support of our, of Supima, of Oritain, also our marketing. We have to teach internally with our sales department, with the product department. It's a school, but the result start to come now, and I think in the next years more and more.
This is great. Now, I think this has been such a great session. Ben, if there are brands that are watching this and wondering how they can get involved, is there any kind of advice you would have or direction that you would have for them?
Well, shameless plug here, but of course, reach out to the partners.
I handed it to you, Ben.
Yeah, you threw that one up. Thanks, Buxton. But no, please feel free to reach out to either myself or the wider Oritain team, or get in touch through our website or various social media channels, or reach out to Marc and yourself and Daniele to really, even if it's just to have a initial discussion. I think that's really important for what could potentially be achieved, looking at the immediate term risks or the real points in which we can help brands, whether it's in a specific product category or a specific product line, to really just start the discussion, or at least we can again explain the process so that the brand can start to become comfortable, or we can meet with different departments just to again disseminate the information for what can be provided. So again, we always go back to the saying of progress and not perfection, and having a discussion is a great first step.
No, and it sounds like I think you bring up a really important point there, that this is not just a matter of production teams, but also bringing in marketing, design. It really involves the full team to do this. This is not just off in the corner, the people involved in sourcing, but really entire teams working together around this to not only achieve this, but to market it and to share that message at retail. It seems like you need to bring the whole team into that discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And again, a lot of our initial discussions were at procurement or with sustainability leads, but it's amazing when you have discussions with the designers as well, how much they respond to the fact that, wow, I can take the fabric that we source and send it and someone analyzes it and tell me where it comes from. It really does resonate with them. And we've had discussions where, again, that education around sustainability and traceability, when it starts at the designer, it also becomes a part of their decision-making process for, okay, well, what fabrics, what materials do I want to be able to procure? And that then begins to elicit the conversation of, okay, well, what impact does this fiber have? And so, again, it starts to ask questions. So again, having discussions with a whole host of different departments is a fantastic place, because it really does ingrain sustainability and traceability into the core of the company. And it's not a flash in the pan in regards to sustainability. It's here for the long term. It's not just a trend. It's going to become a gold standard across all companies.
Well, I think we'll give you the closing word there, Ben. This has been a great discussion. Supima is really appreciative of this panel. I know Marc and I, we've been with Supima almost 20 years each, and spent about every year really working to arrive at the moment that we kind of have arrived at right now. And it's really thanks to you, Ben, and Daniele, for this partnership that we have with you, to take this idea of traceability and authenticity and make it more than a concept, but something that is actually happening. This isn't a discussion about what we hope to do in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but you can see through the hard work of our great partners, Oritain and Albini, that this is something that is happening now and is a resource that can be freely accessed by our licensees, that they can lock into this program, and they can start implementing this now. I think those who heard this probably were impressed with the amount of work it takes to achieve this, but anything of value does take a lot of work. Thanks everyone for a great discussion today. It really was a lot of fun.
Thanks,
Thank you, Buxton.
Thanks, Daniele and Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
All right.
Thank you, Marc.
Really
thanks
appreciate
so much,
all your
everyone.
participation.
And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.